Hello, welcome back to the channel. Time for some extra Type 40 exclusively here from us on the Spacebook channel with me, Dan Hadley, Birmingham's king of the geeks, off into time and space. As always, I very rarely am not, let's be honest. No wonder my family worry about me. But okay, so here we are with Type 40 Extra. This is our before show, our after show, and in between show as we scroll across the view screen of the Whooniverse, checking out those fixed points, all the not so much at on and off screen in all things Doctor Who. And yes, this time, what am I going to be rambling on about to you? Stay tuned to find out, because yeah, it's the Doctor's familiars that we're concerned with again this time on the show. And first of all, yeah, let's talk about now, the here and the now, particularly if you're in the Newport area where Doctor Who has been out filming. Millie Gibson's been on location. She's the latest in that long line of Doctor Who companions, and here she is out there filming. I don't know what she's wearing, whether it's Burberry or not. One of you guys, let me know in the comment section. Let me know in the comment section, is this what all the fashionable companions are wearing at the moment? She looks very poised, doesn't she, and deep in thought. I don't know whether this is actually during a scene or if she's just waiting for her rider to arrive. Who knows? So there's Millie. Of course, we're yet to meet Millie properly as Ruby Sunday. It's going to be a while off yet, but I think we're getting a fair idea, aren't we, about the kind of person that Millie is. I think she's a positive ray of sunshine so far, and what I like as somebody who didn't see her on Coronation Street is that she's somebody who doesn't take herself too seriously at all. And just today, in fact, she's been interacting with the Doctor Who community, with the Doctor Who official accounts over on Twitter. Yes, she does use Twitter. And this morning, the BBC put out one of their sort of compilation posts of various clips and pics and all the rest of it about concerning Matt Smith. And Millie Gibson had to have her say, and this is kind of why I like her. So they went with a quote here from a Matt Smith episode. "I am and always will be the optimist, the hoper of far-flung hopes, and the dreamer of improbable dreams." Hashtag Doctor Who. And then various pictures of the 11th Doctor himself in various states, but looking quite dashing in all of them, I think. And Millie Gibson simply replied underneath to that moving quote 3 words that I think we've all uttered in one form or another about whoever we've been looking at, that he's so hot. There, nailing her colours to the mast there, Millie Gibson, and proving that she is not above fangirling herself. What's not to like about the future Doctor Who companion? I don't know. Let us know what you think about all of that in the comments section. Is she right? Is Matt Smith hot? I have absolutely no idea. I suppose he must be, because so many of you seem to agree generally. Okay. Yeah, while I remember, please like this video. I don't know whether you like what Millie's got to say, but please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the cloister bell so you get all the notifications about what we're doing next and when we're doing it. All the various conversations that we have stretching across the podcast, the live streams, and these little video diaries from me and the round tables that we have here on Type 40 Extra. We're all ears for any ideas that you may have for further shows. Yeah, so Millie Gibson, as I said before, she's just the latest in this long line of Doctor Who companions. They did try and get us to call them friends for a little while, didn't they? That hasn't stuck, as these things don't. But she's going to be ushering in this new era, this all new era of Doctor Who, and I think somebody described her as one for the ages, which, it's hyperbole in one respect, but is it? Because, and this is no slight on anybody who's been in the TARDIS with the Doctors, but obviously not all of them have defined their times, have they? That there've been several that have standout companions, because that list that obviously started way back in 1963 with Carol Ann Ford. We talked about her last week on the show, but following just a few years later, just 3 years later, was one guy in particular who I think is still, even after all these years, even as the show approaches its proper 60th anniversary in November, then everybody gets very excited about all that. This is somebody whose contribution and his own link to the show and to the brand has stayed very much in place, despite the fact that he's been linked in the years in between to a show that is just as long running, really, and just as much a part of British popular culture. I think you know what I'm talking about. It's Fraser Hines. So Fraser Simpson Frederick Hines, born on the 22nd of September 1944, is an English actor, not a Scots actor, but he began his career as a child actor. He starred in a movie with Charlie Chaplin, believe it or not, all the way back in 1957. He'd already auditioned for Doctor Who once. He auditioned to play Ben Jackson, the part that Michael Craze ended up playing. But he finally got in there, secured the role of Jamie McCrimmon, and went on to appear in 117 episodes of the show. That's more than any other companion. So he was, obviously, as I'm sure you know, he was that regular, wasn't he? He formed half of that iconic duo, the other half being Patrick Troughton as the second Doctor. And together they travelled between 1966 and 1969. Now, Fraser joined the show in Pat's second story, the Highlanders, and so it's next to impossible to imagine those two characters not stood next to one another, isn't it? It's a seminal partnership, the Doctor and Jamie, just as the Doctor and Sarah is, just as the Doctor and Rose was, and so on and so on and so on. So this is what I mean by a companion for the ages. Fraser is a man who, let's be honest, we all know he likes a drop or two. He knows how to have a good time, and I think this is infectious too. I think you can see that he had a great time on the show. They had a great time on the show, and that's part of why I believe this relationship connected for us on screen. It's a tangible bond you can see, you can detect between the actors, and that informs the characters too. So it's absolute magic. Fraser is obviously 78 years of age. 70, yes, that's right, 78 years of age. And he's still very much linked to Doctor Who, still plays Jamie on audio. He's returned to the part several times, not least of all on screen, has he? So there was in the Two Doctors back in 1985, that was his last appearance, but he'd been back for the Five Doctors as well. So for a time, it was as if we couldn't keep Fraser away. He partnered with Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant throughout a lot of that, and there's that first appearance there with Michael Craze, Anika Wills, and Patrick Troughton. So this man, he's seen Doctor Who through some pretty crucial times, I think it's fair to say. And he's very, very invested in the brand, in us, and understandably, in his own career. He maintains the connections to the characters, going to conventions all over the world. And I think most of us have a story about an encounter, an exchange with Fraser, whose sense of humour seems to be somewhat legendary in itself, doesn't it? He's a man who doesn't take himself seriously at all, but he's very, very proud of his connection to the show, and full of ideas too about how it could be extended. And that's exactly what he's been doing this very week. He's been talking to the press, the British press, which is a pretty dangerous thing to do. They haven't always been kind to Fraser for one reason or another, but this week he's been talking to the Express exclusively, as they boast. And the headline says, Doctor Who star urges Russell T Davies to bring him back for a great story, one final time, one final fling for the Highlander. So what's in this? What does Fraser have to say? What's his proposal? Let's find out. So the article says the British science fiction series will be celebrating its 60th anniversary later this year, and that this one star is hoping to make a return. Fraser has opened up about wanting to return to the show. Hines, 78, portrayed Jamie McCrimmon in the Family series between 66 and 69, making several comebacks. And there he is, bless his heart. So what's prompted Fraser to rattle this particular saber and to come up with and to go and talk to the Express exclusively? It turns out that Fraser has an idea for a story. So he has an idea for a story that he wants to put to Russell. And this is what he says: I've got an idea for a story, and I'd love to meet Russell T Davies and say, this is my story for a story. Give it to him. One story. I don't want to be a forever a companion. Just a great idea for a story. So one episode and I'm out. So it seems that Fraser has a bee in his bonnet, and he has one final story for Jamie McCrimmon that he has a burning desire to tell. I have no idea what that could be. Now, obviously, Russell T Davies, we don't know who exactly is going to be in the writer's room for Doctor Who series 14 or 15. I understand that Russell's deep into writing series 15 too, so they've very much got it sort of plotted out where they're going. I can't imagine Russell's writing it all himself, but should he be listening to actors who are, such as Fraser, clearly invested in their part? We spoke on the last show, on the last one of these video diaries, about the possibilities for Susan Foreman returning, played by Carol Ann Ford. I think that as time has ticked on since I talked to you about that, that's looking like a shoo-in. But obviously, the more people come back to the show, the more of a fanfare it gets. It's quite understandable that other Doctor Who legends are thinking, well, I've got an idea. I could do this. I could do that. And in the case of Fraser, who's clearly a very creative man, he's a true star, Fraser. He's a big star in this country. People are tremendously fond of him, not just from his time on Doctor Who, but from all that time on Emmerdale. I think it was something like 25 years he was on that show. So, yeah, Fraser went on to say very, very little about the actual idea. In fact, so it says in the article, Fraser has kept his cards close to his chest, and he wouldn't share any details on this possible final farewell story for Jamie that he wants to pitch to Russell T Davies. But he did speak further about the popularity of Jamie, and he says, I don't know. I can't put my finger on why Jamie's so popular. Maybe it's because he was so brave. And he was, wasn't he? He was a brave character. He was a young man, but he was loyal to the Doctor, and he would often, I think that loyalty to the Doctor put him in not just more jeopardy, but challenged him to grow as a person, which is what the best companions, that's when they travel an arc like that, and particularly over 3 or 4 seasons, that's when it affects us most. That's when we bond with them most. He says maybe it was because he was so brave. He just seemed to get the viewers, the fans like him. I think that's what it is. Yeah. He went on to say that Jamie's innocence was part of the charm. I call them Jamieisms. He can ask silly questions. It could be silly, but the thing I found about Jamie was that I was the kid sitting at home. I could ask the questions that the kids would ask. Of course, he's absolutely right, isn't it? That's what the companions are there for. They're proxies for us, particularly the children. And I suppose you could say that Jamie's and the Second Doctor, come to think of it, their personas, their connections, it was and is very, very childlike when you watch it. They are like two best friends. There's something quite Enid Blyton about the whole thing, isn't it? Yeah, Fraser went on to talk about another Time Lord. He talked about Peter Capaldi and a visit that he made to the set of Doctor Who back in 2014 when Peter was still the Doctor. And he was full of praise for the experience. There's several pictures that are floating around social media from that. But he said here that not many actors would do that, would have him on the set there. He was a lovely man, and I would love to meet him again and shake his hand because he is lovely. He went on to praise Rachel Talalay too. So she was working on the show as director at the time, and she said that Rachel pointed to Hines and told the rest of the crew, without him, without his Doctor, we wouldn't be working here today. And they all stood up and gave Fraser a round of applause, which is obviously that is going to be touching for anybody, isn't it? On a big set like that with a big director, I can see why he'd want to do it. Why he'd want to do it again? Not least of all because he could get that extra money for the writer's credit, couldn't he? If Russell goes with his story. Fraser hasn't been idle over the last few years. Recently, he was on a show that Sony Pictures Television produced. It's called Outlander, adapted from some books by a writer called Diana Gabaldon, something like that. So a series of books, they're sort of fantasy books, aren't they, called Outlander. And I believe that the character, one of the two central characters in that, was largely inspired by Jamie McCrimmon. And Fraser Hines got some. I don't think it was a cameo role either. I've never seen this show, but apparently he was in at least season 1 of it. There he is looking quite distinguished on screen, wearing the wig and all the rest of it. So, yeah, I think I'd love to see Fraser Hines back as Jamie McCrimmon. I mean, let's be honest, who wouldn't? There is the case, though, isn't there, that this show, particularly, all joking apart, springing out of a 60th anniversary special, this show really does need to gather ground, to gain momentum, to grow its audience, and to extend its legend. So realistically, how many comebacks can we indulge? How many former faces, familiar faces, well-loved faces, however loved they are, can we indulge as fans? And certainly can Russell T Davies and Bad Wolf indulge as the professionals who are guiding this ship and restoring this brand to its former luster. You know, it's no reflection on past actors or writers or anybody else that used to be involved in other successful eras of the show. If they're not used, if they're not taken up on these really quite sweet offers. But of course, even though that is cold hard truth, part of us as fans, we can't help it. We'd love to see those actors back in those roles just one more time. I suppose in an ideal situation, Doctor Who would be not just running 10 episodes a year. How many have they said? It's going to be 8 in the forthcoming series, isn't it? But in an ideal world, we would be getting 20 of those every year, and there'd be plenty of room for things like that. But perhaps it is a bit of a stretch this time. I'd like to think, at some point we might get to find out what Fraser's story could be. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Where do you think it is that Fraser wants to take Jamie McCrimmon for that one last reunion with the Doctor, played by Ncuti Gatwa? And why live action? Why on screen? And why hasn't he gone to Big Finish with this idea? Well, it's understandable. The actor wants to be on screen, of course he does. But all this talk of Jamie does bring to mind to me a story that was massively important to me when I was growing up. A comic strip story. You might have been around for this too. I'm talking about The World Shapers by Grant Morrison, the writer Grant Morrison. Now, one of the biggest names in comics. Started out on Marvel UK. I think that was his first published work, originally on the Zoids comic strip in Spider-Man and Zoids, and then into Doctor Who magazine. And he wrote this story called The World Shapers, which appeared back in late 1987, I think, August, September time, something like that, in issues 127 to 129. And the art was by the legendary John Ridgway. And in that story, the Sixth Doctor, he reconnects with Jamie, who's living the life of a recluse as an old man, all bearded. And I think he's living in a shack on a hill somewhere, something like that. And he gets him in for one more adventure. And Jamie gets to go back on the TARDIS for a reunion, not just with the Sixth Doctor, but with Perry too, and with Frobisher the Penguin there. And it's a beautiful story. Even now, I think this is one of the very best Doctor Who comic strips ever made. And it does, without spoiling it, if you've never read it, it does bring Jamie's story to a really definite close. How could you top that? We know at the moment that Russell T Davies is adapting comic strips. He's looked at the Star Beast, hasn't he? So he's very familiar with the legacy of Doctor Who in comics. I can't believe for a single moment that he doesn't know about the World Shapers. Could this story be retooled too in time? I think it probably could, yeah. Fraser Hines isn't an actor, in all seriousness, who's all about looking backwards. Yeah, Doctor Who's been very, very kind to him, but he's been really kind to Doctor Who too. He's been very good to the fan base. And, bear in mind, it's no exaggeration to say that he's not really been off screen in all those decades since. And it's not the only thing he's had going on either. He's an accomplished horseman. Somewhat of a swordsman, if you follow me. But as we head into this 60th anniversary, is one more outing for Jamie McCrimmon really too much to ask? I don't think it is. Let me know what you think. Let us know what you think through our social media, Instagram and Twitter, at Type40 Doctor Who, or let us know in the comments section, what do you think about all of that? And while you're here, while you're on the channel, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the cloister bell so you get all the notifications about what we're doing next and when we're doing it. Type 40 Live's back soon. There's the Type 40 Podcast 2, dropping regular episodes throughout the anniversary year. Lots of brand new reviews, previews, geek outs, and deep dives coming your way, I can guarantee that. But I want to quickly remind you about these. So yeah, where are they? We've got these. These are the segments from Type 40 Live. These are two of our most popular long-running segments. There's Merchandise Paradise, which JT brings together for us, doesn't he? All those wonderful bits of plastic and metal that we can add to our collections and line our shelves with. JT brings us all the inside information there on what's being offered to retailers, what we can expect, usually with 2 or 3 months in advance, and we get to salivate, don't we, over the things that we can afford and the things that we can't. So that's always good for a laugh. And you can budget ahead too, can't you? Or you can maybe, if you've got family who say that you're impossible to buy for, you can just suggest, drop them a link to Merchandise Paradise, I don't know. And there's the Doctor Who Diary too, which is around half an hour's worth of unabashed nostalgia there with a whimsical, I like to think this is a whimsical look at Doctor Who past the people, the places, the stories, and normally with a few random facts thrown in there too, just to keep things ticking along. That's the Doctor Who Diary, put together by the original Lunatic, the brilliant Mr. Simon Horton. So yeah, you'll find those in the playlists on the channel. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the cloister bell so you get notifications about further segments from Type 40 Live, because we know there are people out there who prefer to get their stuff in this more sort of bite-sized form, rather than the 2.5 hour live stream section. So one more time, what do you think? What do you think the big idea is that Fraser Hines has got? What's this story, this final Jamie story that Fraser feels simply must be told? Let us know what you think it could be in the comment section. I'll speak to you all again soon. You take care. Bye-bye.